Perfect. All right, let me do a quick screen share here. All right. Well, first of all, welcome. Thanks for hopping on tonight. Appreciate it. This usually lasts about an hour. Depends on if we've got questions and things like that. So about an hour. But uh, this is one of three presentations that I do for real estate investing. I have kind of an um, intro class. This is our intermediate class, and then I have an advanced class. And so you'll get a kind of an idea. The intro class, if you've been to the intro class before, just kind of talks about the very first steps of house hacking, maybe purchasing your first property, maybe purchasing your first property as a duplex, triplex, quadplex, something like that. And then this talks a little bit about how to scale above and beyond that. Okay, so and then the third edition is kind of more of a tax advantage piece and how to create a tax advantage out of your real estate portfolio. So anyway, we'll start with the scaling your investments piece here. So a little bit about me. I've been investing in real estate since right around the beginning of 2010. I'm the managing broker of Remax Alliance in Westminster, and I'm also the owner of the Meta Homes team. We've done over $80 million in real estate acquisitions, just in investment acquisitions alone over the last 5 years. And I'm a certified coach, business coach for Workman Success Systems, and I do national speaking engagements on real estate investing. So this is kind of my niche. I specialize really in listing property, selling homes, and on the investment side, helping people build real estate portfolios and really just achieve their financial goals through real estate. Um, so we're going to talk about we're going to kind of go through a four-step process today. So the overview of it is that we're going to talk about acquisition, leveraging, exchanging, and how to exit on the back end when you're kind of done building your wealth or building your portfolio. So we're going to talk about those four steps today. All right. So the first piece is acquisition. Obviously, there's a couple things to look at when we're talking about acquisition. First of all, it's time in the market and not timing the market, right? So really, the idea here is to acquire as many appreciating assets as possible. And so when you're purchasing as much real estate as you can, and you're doing it as early as you can, time is your friend, right? So if we compound values, really the historical real estate appreciation is just under 5%. And so it depends on where you are in the United States, but this is a historical national average. It's like 4.95% or something like that. Okay. So the reality is, if you can build yourself a $10 million real estate portfolio, that's going to grow in value around $500,000 per year. And so the most important piece of this, the most important tool of acquiring the real estate is that you're leveraging an appreciating asset. And so the most powerful financial tool on the planet is the 30-year fixed interest rate mortgage against appreciating asset. There's no other financial tool in the world where you can borrow 97% or 95% of the value of the asset you're purchasing, right? Imagine being able to go buy $1 million worth of Apple stock for 50 grand. You can't do it. Not only that, but if you could do it, if you bought stock on margin, for example, you're going to have a variable rate and a much more expensive rate borrowing that money to buy stock. So we're also very fortunate in the United States that we have this because much of the world doesn't have 30-year fixed interest rate mortgages. So for example, even our neighbors north in Canada, they have 30-year mortgages, but they're not fixed rate. And so every year on January 1st, their interest rates move based on what prime is doing at the time. So it's very important to understand that this financial tool that we're given in the United States is a very powerful tool. All right, so let's kind of look at what a home value and a mortgage balance does just over the first 20 years of ownership. Okay, so the chart on this that we have here represents a home value over 20 years, and it represents basically buying a piece of property at $500,000. If you were to buy that property at $500,000 using $100,000 down payment, okay, your initial loan amount is going to be 400,000, and after the first year it'll drop to 395. Over the period of the first 10 years, that home's value grows $275,000 in value, and your loan balance decreases by $65,000. Over a 20-year period, that property is going to appreciate to be 1.26 million, and you're going to have a loan balance of 217,000. So just on one piece of property, one $500,000 piece of property with $100,000 invested in that property, in 20 years, that's going to balloon to over $1 million in equity. All right. Any questions so far on that, or just on that chart alone? Any questions there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to learn this app. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'll check out.
All right, Chris, no question though on that app or on that page?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, so now let's look at if you were to buy a property every 5 years, okay, or buy $500,000 worth of real estate every 5 years, okay? So this is what it looks like if you bought one property and then every 5 years you kept it and you bought another property, okay? And now let's say in this instance that you bought each property for $500,000 and you put 20% down each time. So your total investment, okay, would be 400,000, or over 20 years it would be 20K a year. Okay, so let's say you had the ability to save $20,000 a year and invest it in real estate, meaning you'd save 20,000 this year, 20,000 the year after that, so on until you got to 100,000, and in 5 years you bought another $500,000 worth of real estate. This is what it would look like. So again, at the end of 20 years, this is the appreciation level. The dark blue is the appreciation level of property number 1, property number 2, property number 3, and property number 4. So at the end of 20 years, you'd have 3.7, almost $3.8 million worth of real estate. Okay. Now, we will have leveraged all those properties. And so this is what your mortgage balances look like over that period of time. Okay. So now what happens is your first loan goes from mortgage number 1 goes from 395 all the way down to 217, like we talked about. Okay. And your loan balances in this instance would total approximately 1.17 million. Okay. So in 20 years, if you bought a property every 5 years, okay, you'd have a net worth of just over $2.6 million, and that's just in real estate. Okay. So for those of you that are here that are, 25, 30, 35 years old, maybe 45, 50, 55 years old and have a net worth of $2.5 million just in real estate. Okay. This is a compound annual growth rate, okay, of 12.54%, which is massive. Okay. This also does not include if you have any cash flow on these properties. So this is talking about if we have a cash flow neutral investment, property. So if these are all cash flow neutral, we still end up with $2.6 million worth of net worth. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the leverage on these properties. We talked about the acquisition, buying properties over that period of time. Okay. One of the things that comes up at this point as well, so for a lot of people, maybe saving $100,000 every 5 years is not doable. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit of a different strategy on how we can do that, and then you'll see how if you can save $100,000 every 5 years, how you could really balloon this kind of strategy. All right, so let's talk about how you avoid putting 20% down each time. Well, first of all, you can use the house hacking method. Okay, so you'd only put 5% down each time, which gives you the same value in homes. Okay, you're still buying a $500,000 property. Okay, but instead of putting $100,000 down each time, you're putting $25,000 down each time. So over the period of 20 years, you've only paid $100K, or you'd only come out of pocket $100K. Okay, in this case, you would have higher amounts of leverage. Okay, but the value of the real estate would be the same. So you'd still have $3.787 million worth of real estate. Okay, and your loan balances would be 1.385. So now you'd have a total net worth of 2.4 million. So it's slightly less than the 2.6 million. Okay, but we only invested 100 grand, not 400 grand. So we invested 75% less, and our net worth is maybe down 10%. Okay. This makes your compound annual growth rate 20.4%, which again is a massive, massive number. All right. So the way that we increase our compound annual growth rate, okay, the houses appreciate just the same. Our leverage gets paid off just the same. The difference is the amount that we invested to begin with is significantly less, which increases our return. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions on that piece? All right. So what's next? So we've shown how we can generate returns of 12 to 20% annually. So can we do better? All right. So let's talk about the opportunity to re-leverage, meaning instead of us even having to come out of pocket with the 100,000 or the 400,000 that we talked about, how can we borrow that money, that 100 or that $400,000 to move up to the next property? Okay. So every time that we get $1 of equity in our property, every time we increase our value of our property, it gives us an opportunity to re-leverage that dollar. Okay. So if we increase value in $100,000 on a property, we can pull some of that money back out and take that money and buy a new property. Okay. So the second thing that we can do is lower rates mean better returns. So anytime the market moves interest rates, okay, and it moves them lower, we have an opportunity to refinance and pull money out at a lower interest rate that gives us the opportunity to increase our cash flow, increase the amount of principal that gets paid off on a monthly basis, okay, and just decrease our overall monthly liability for that property, okay? The second piece behind this is that low interest debt is actually extremely valuable. Okay, so if we've got low interest debt, so for example, you've got a house that's got a 3%, 2.5%, 3.5% mortgage, okay, we have an opportunity because the debt is cheaper than, for example, inflation right now, or the debt that we own is cheaper than the debt that's available to people. And so as interest rates increase, let's say interest rates are currently right around 7%. If interest rates increase to 8%, 9%, something like that, our 2% loan or our 3% loan is extremely valuable. What we can do is we can start selling property and doing, for example, what we call wraparound mortgages, meaning if I sell a property to Teresa, for example, and her opportunity is to go to the bank and get a loan for 9%, and I've got the property, I already own it with a 3% loan, I can go to Teresa and say, tell you what, I'll loan the money to you. I'll be the bank for you at 7.5%. And so what happens is she gets an advantage over the bank, and I make a 5.5% spread on the money that I've already borrowed. So meaning she gets the home, okay, and I'm getting a spread. Not only am I getting maybe her down payment, but I'm also getting the spread on money that I'm not even loaning to her. I'm letting the bank that I borrowed the money for, she's going to pay that note off, but I'm going to receive a 5.5% spread return on that. Okay, so that's not a common thing right now, but it was very common in the 90s, okay, and the 80s when we had really high interest rates. So in the event that interest rates increase significantly, having low interest debt is extremely valuable. Okay, so anytime you can refinance the property into low interest debt, it's a really powerful thing. All right, so let's look at scaling here. So if instead of saving $20,000 to $100,000 every 5 years, we just use the equity growth in one of our prior properties to fund the next purchase, let's look at how that would change our numbers. Okay, so instead of, again, saving money out of our paycheck, let's just re-leverage the properties every 5 years. Okay, so let's look at just one property number one. If every 5 years we refinance property number one to 75% loan to value, okay, meaning if we take a look here, for example, in year 5, let's start with year 1. Again, we buy a property at 500,000 and we put 100K down. Okay, so we're gonna have a $400,000 loan. Well, in year 5, our property value has increased to 607. So if we do 75% of that, that's $455,000. So in this instance, our loan has been paid down to 378, and now we can take out a loan of 455. So in year 5, we're able to pull out $76,853. In year 10, we go back up to year 10, now our property is worth $775,000 and our loan balance is $431. 75% of $775,000 is $581. So now we can take out the difference between $431 and $581, which is almost $150,000. One more time, year 15, we could then pull out $191,000. Okay, so now if we scale this and we take this property and we decide that we're going to take this property to use property number 2, okay, the first property maybe as an investor costs us $100,000 out of pocket. But second property is only going to cost us $23,000, right? That's the difference between this $76,853 and the $100,000 down payment we need. So property number 2 only costs us $23,000, and then properties number 3 and 4, they're 100% paid for by the re-leveraged property number 1. Okay, so in this, if you use this method, okay, we're going to have again $3.787 million worth of real estate after 20 years. We're going to have $1.6 million of loan balances, and we're going to have $2.1 million of total net worth, which means our total out of pocket was $123 over that 20-year period. That compound annual growth is now 15% compared to the 12% that we did as an investor before. Okay, so you can see how this re-leveraging piece allows you to increase your annualized return. So if you do the same thing as a house hacker, it grows even more, right? So this is what this looks like. Okay, so when you scale and you grow, this is what it looks like. So in year 1, we're going to buy property number 1. In year 5, we've saved $100,000, let's say, and we're going to actually, sorry, we don't even have to save $100,000. We have to save $23,000. We're going to re-leverage property number 1, and we're going to add $23,000 to it, and we're going to buy property number 2. Okay. In year 10, we're going to re-leverage property number 1 again, and we're going to buy property number 3. But now property number 2 has also had 5 years to appreciate, and we're going to re-leverage that one and buy property number 4. In year 15, we're going to re-leverage property number 1 yet again and buy property number 5. We're going to re-leverage property number 2 again and buy property number 6. And we're now going to re-leverage properties 3 and 4 to buy properties number 7 and 8. So by year 20, you can re-leverage property number 1 again. So now property number 1, the very first property you bought, has become the catalyst to purchase 1, 2, 3, 4 more properties. So just that very first property becomes the catalyst to buy 4 more properties. Property number 2 allows you to do it 3 more times. Okay, so you re-leverage property number 1, buy property number 9. Property number 2, buy property number 10. Okay, and this is how it looks in a pyramid form. By the time you're done after 20 years, you have 16 properties. Okay, again, you're 25, 30 years old. When you're 55, 50, 45 years old, 60 years old, whatever it may be, you have 16 properties. Here's what this 16 properties will look like. So at the end of year 20, you can have 16 properties, okay? That's going to total, the value of those properties is going to total $10,484,000, okay? Your first property is going to be worth over $1 million by now because you've had it for 20 years, okay? Each of the first 8 properties are leveraged at 75% because in year 20, we just re-leveraged them to buy properties number 9 through 16, okay? So that's $4.8 million in loans. Each of the last 8 properties are leveraged at 80% because we put 20% down. That's $3.2 million in loans, okay? So now you've got total mortgages of $8 million and you got a total net worth of $2.4 million. So now what's interesting is if you notice what we've been going through, okay, if you just bought 4 properties, your net worth is $2.4 million, okay? I think it was $2.6 million, okay, if you bought 4 properties and put $100,000 down each, okay? If you did the second way, the house hacking method, you had 4 properties, and your net worth was $2.4 million. Okay. This way, we're re-leveraging, we're buying 16 properties. Your net worth doesn't change, but it's what happens after year 20 that changes. So now instead of having $3.7 million worth of real estate after 20 years, okay, we have $10 million worth of real estate after 20 years. Those properties, if you stopped right now, those properties will continue to appreciate about 5%, which is $500,000 a year in the first year and increasing every year after that. The other thing is that we receive principal reduction in the form of our tenants paying our mortgages. Our principal reduction is $100,000 a year. So every single year, we're increasing our net worth $600,000 starting after year 20. So we're getting $1.5 million in principal reduction in a 10-year period. Okay, and we're getting like $5 million, actually probably $6.5 to $7 million of appreciation in that time. So over a 30-year period, we've now got a net worth somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, we've got $17 million worth of real estate, and we've got about $6.5 million worth of loans. So now we're worth $10 million after 30 years. Okay. All right. So let's talk about that. So by year 30, your real estate portfolio is going to be about 17 million bucks, and you're going to have $6.5 million in loans. There's your $10 million net worth. Okay. And remember, this is done with $123,000 out of pocket. So I would love somebody to show me a different investment where you can invest $123,000, okay, and turn it into $10 million in 30 years. Because it doesn't. Maybe if you get lucky and you buy Apple or you buy Amazon or something like that, okay. But invest in index funds, invest in the S&P 500, invest anywhere else. It's not going to do that. Okay. So if you house hack your first two properties, okay, your out of pocket will be less than 50 grand. So that's even more valuable. Okay. So any questions on that before I move on? Any questions on this?
Sounds good.
It does sound good. Sounds great.
Hey, Nick, I
It
had a
does.
question.
Sorry.
I have a question actually,
Yeah, Teresa.
and I might be totally off base here, but isn't Colorado real estate law, you have to claim the house as your, and again, I jumped in late, so I'm sorry if you covered this already, but you have to claim the first house as your primary residence for 2 years before you can go on and avoid capital gains tax and buy the second property. Am I correct in that with all of these?
So you're correct in that you have to live in a property for 2 years to avoid capital gains tax. But we're not caring if we avoid capital gains tax because we're not selling.
We're not selling them, right? But don't you have to live in them for a certain amount of time and have
1 year.
them be a primary?
1 year. Yep. So once you live in it for 1 year, you can go buy a new primary residence and keep the old one, and then you can literally have primary residence loans on at least the first 10. So you're limited to 10 government-backed primary residence loans. But let's say you have a spouse that you can do this with. You can buy 10 in your name, and they can buy 10 in their name. So you could buy 20 properties with government-backed loans if you want to. If you were to run out of government-backed loans, that would be a good problem to have.
Hey, Nick, quick question.
Yes, sir.
So as you re-leverage every 5 years, are we assuming that you're cash flow positive whenever you do that?
We're generally assuming, so this whole presentation is assuming cash flow neutrality.
Okay.
And so the idea would be that's a great question, by the way. Let's go back to this. Okay, so if you had a mortgage at 400,000 here, okay, and let's say the way you rented this property, it was cash flow neutral at this point, okay, and let's say you rented the property for $2,500 per month, and that would be about right in today's market. A $500,000 property, actually, it's a little more than that. You probably get about $2,800 a month for a $500,000 property right now, but at 400,000. Let's say you were cash flow neutral, meaning let's say it was $2,800 a month rent and $2,800 a month for your mortgage payment. when you re-leverage and you go from a $400,000 loan to a $455,000 loan, okay, your mortgage increase is $55,000. The cost of a mortgage is about $6 per thousand. And so in this case, it would increase, as long as your interest rate was the same, it would increase your monthly payment by about $350, well, about $320. But we also keep in mind that each year we should be increasing our rents by about 3%. So if we started with a property that was, let's say, again, 2,800, we're going to be increasing our rents by about $80 per year. So $80 per year for 5 years is about $400 in rent increases. So we should be able to maintain cash flow neutrality through all of this. Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you got it. So yeah, so that fantastic question though. People are like, yeah, but you're pulling more money, so the cost of the property goes up every year or every time you do that, which is exactly correct. But what we're doing is you could also hang on to this property and let your rents build and create nice cash flow. This strategy is we're trading cash flow for acquisition. So I'm going, hey, I'm fine being cash flow neutral as long as I can purchase more property. Make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay, cool. So now imagine this, if at some point, whether it's on that 5-year window or prior to that 5-year window, okay, if you could save a few percentage points on your mortgage, okay, so all of the previous data, I just used a 6% interest rate, okay? If you drop to a 5.5% interest rate on all these, your cash flow would be increased by $2,500, okay? And your principal reduction would be increased by $8,000 a year, okay? If you could drop to 5,000 or 5%, your monthly cash flow is increased by $5,000, and your principal reduction increases to $16,000 a year. So the benefit here, there's two things we have to think about. One, if we get a great opportunity to refinance all of our properties down to a really low rate, we should do it. We also need to think about if we've got property number 1, for example, let's go back here, and we've got property number 1, and let's say we financed it right here at 3%. And when we go to refinance in year 5, interest rates are at 6. You have to decide, like, do I want to do that? Do I want to increase my interest rate and lose a bunch of cash flow in order to pull the money out and buy a new property? That's when it's a good idea to sit down and talk with someone like me, for example, and we'll put those options side by side and we'll go, all right, what happens if you don't do it? And what happens if you do it? Okay, that's what we call opportunity cost. So sometimes, does it make sense to refinance your property into a higher rate so that you can get the cash back out and make another investment? Yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes it does make sense to actually re-leverage your property and increase your interest rate, because the amount of cash that's locked up in that property can be put to use to offset that 3% increase in mortgage rate. Okay, so these all take a little bit of data analysis to figure out every 5 years, like, okay, is our best move to do that? But in a linear or a lateral interest rate movement, or especially a decreased interest rate, then yes, 100% you should be taking the opportunity to refinance property. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what happens if interest rates get worse, right? Because obviously we've seen that happen over the last few years. So number one, worse interest rates usually mean better real estate prices. Okay, so prices tend to come down. They have not, by the way, in the last couple of years, but prices tend to come down in higher interest rate markets. Okay, so start buying property. It's a great, anytime the interest rates go way up and it crashes the market, beautiful, let's buy some property. Okay, number two, the acquisition of the real estate is more valuable than the increase of the mortgage rate, okay, at least in short term. Okay, it's the 30-year fixed mortgage. That's where the power lies. Okay, So it lies in the ability to refinance. So put yourself in a position, think about like if you were able to lock in gas prices back in 1990, okay, or early 2000s, if you could have locked in gas prices for 30 years, okay, so for example, I guess I started driving in, it would have been 2001, and gas prices were right around $1.50 a gallon. Okay. If I could have locked that in for 30 years, that would have been awesome. But there was a point in 2002 or 2003, I can't remember the exact year, where gas prices actually went to 89 cents. Imagine me being able to then go, nope, I don't want my $1.50 locked in anymore. I want my 89 cents locked in. So I'm locking in a rate where if it gets worse, I get to keep my rate. But if it gets better, I get to have that too. Like think of any other financial tool on the planet where you could do that. It doesn't exist. And that's where the power lies, is that you can lock in a rate so that if things get worse, you're fine. But if things get better, you can have that one. It's an incredible financial tool. Okay. We already talked about the fact that low interest debt is valuable during high interest market. You can hold notes on property where your rate is significantly lower than the market rate, and then you can earn the spread. So number 4, inflationary times. Okay, so when we have inflationary times with low interest rates, it leads to high home prices. Increased valuations of homes lead to a flood of money, which then causes interest rates to rise to offset inflation. Okay, we benefit from all of that stuff by owning real estate. Okay, if increased valuations happen, beautiful, my house is worth more and I can pull more money from it when I go to refinance it. Okay, a bunch of money goes into the market and I can buy more property. Okay, and then when inflation happens, they increase interest rates. Okay, now I've got this locked in lower rate. Home prices come down and I use that money that I pulled out to buy cheaper home prices.
Hey Nick, I got a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about escrow rates? I've just noticed some increase in my escrow, and
Yep.
my monthly payment has gone up recently. So how can we defer that to get away from that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that's kind of outside of our control, right? Is if we're holding escrow for taxes and insurance, it's one thing that you can be sure of is you're gonna have taxes go up and you're gonna have insurance go up. Insurance is the big one right now. Everybody's getting smashed with hail and interest. Be ready after the hailstorm that we just had. It was the biggest one in the United States so far this year. We have tons and tons of hail claims here in Colorado. Watch what your insurance rates are going to do next year. They are going to skyrocket. Okay, and things I will tell you is a few things. If you own a home or you own multiple homes right now, you should 100% have a roofer go out and check your roof right now. And if you need a new roof, replace it. Okay, a couple reasons behind that. One, if you don't, there's all insurance companies have a look back period. If you go to say sell your property 2 years from now and it's got hail damage and you have to replace the roof in order to sell it, you're not going to be able to get an insurance claim on it because if it's past a year, your insurance company is not going to do it. Second of all, your rates of your insurance do not go up when you make a claim for peril. So when you make a claim for wind or hail, your insurance rates will not go up because of that claim. Your insurance rates will go up because of the totality of claims in the area or in the state. And so what happens is your rates next year for your homeowner's insurance are going to go up regardless because so many of your neighbors made hail claims. So many of the people around you made hail claims. So the insurance rates are going to go up because of the totality of the claims. So if you're going to pay more for your insurance, you might as well get a new roof out of it if you need one. Okay, so don't think that, oh, I don't want to make an insurance claim on my roof or on my siding or whatever because I don't want my interest rates to go up. They're going to go up anyway. Wind and peril do not increase your interest rates individually or your insurance rates individually. Only if you flood your property or you set your property on fire or something like that, that's your fault. That's what makes your insurance rates go up. Okay, but insurance rates go up naturally because of natural stuff that happens like hail and wind. So might as well, if you're going to get that if you don't claim your roof, your insurance rates are still going to go up next year because of the amount of damage that was caused in that last hailstorm. So might as well get it done. Okay. And by the way, if you got a car that was damaged in it, let me know. Adam, who's on the call today, does paintless dent repair and takes care of people that have car damage. So let me know, and I'll pass his number along to you.
Oh yeah.
Waive your
Thank you.
deductibles.
And they'll pay up to $1,000 of your deductible too. So
And pay
Yeah,
for your
and,
rental
and
car.
Ashton's
And-
my teammate on that one, so both of us hit us up because we got you
Yeah, we both
covered.
do it.
that's true. Adam and Ashton both do it. So
For
Oh,
the
they do,
Legacy
yeah.
team.
let me know, and I'll give you their number. All right. So the
Does
fifth
Adam
piece
do a
here-
roof too?
Sorry, Chris, what was that?
Does Adam do roof or just cars?
No, just
We
cars.
just
but
do
I
cars.
I got roof
Cars.
people for you, Chris.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, so good question on the escrows. Those are going to happen regardless, and so it's just another reason to make sure that we're increasing our rental amounts over this. And again, if we're sitting really tight, if you come to me and you go, hey, I'm thinking about buying another property, and your finances are really tight, it's probably not the time to do it. But if you got some room to spare and you're like, yeah, I could take a $500 increase in my rents and still not be cash flow negative, perfect. Let's do it. But if you're cash flow negative right now, and your income level is at a point where you don't have a whole lot to spare, we're at we have a different conversation here, right? So we do have to keep in mind that yes, taxes are going to go up and insurance is going to go up, and you're right, they've been brutal the last couple of years. So the nice thing is again, this kind of fact number 5 is that all this means that no matter what the market does, your real estate portfolio puts you in a really good position, okay? Because low interest debt is valuable, okay? And no matter what the market does, we've got some value out of it, all right, let's talk about the process once we acquire those 4 or 10 or 16 properties, whatever your comfort level is in growing your portfolio. Let's talk about what we do with all those properties to continue to grow our portfolio, okay? There's some things that we need to look at, and so exchanging properties is really something that you should understand. And we use something called a 1031 exchange to exchange properties while deferring taxes on the money that we make for them. Okay. And so there's a couple of things. At some point, that first property that you bought that's now 20 years old or older, depending on how old it was when you bought it, properties become what we call functionally obsolete, or they have functional obsolescence. Okay. Basically what happens is they're going to be getting close to a point where they need so much work in the future that it's maybe not worthwhile. So for example, maybe you look at a house and you go, man, I'm going to need to put new siding on this house probably in the next 5 to 10 years. Well, if the market's looking really good, maybe you sell it now before the siding gets so bad that you can't sell it. Okay, or that you have to do it before you sell it. Okay, so we're looking for functional obsolescence in properties to go, okay, the market's really good right now. Instead of refinancing that property, I'm going to sell the property, and then I'm going to take the money that I have and buy 2 properties with the equity. Okay, so we're going to use some tax strategies through that, like the section 1031 of the tax code, and it allows us to exchange one property for another, one property for 2, and we don't have to realize the tax burden. We can defer the tax burden and push it down the road. Okay, so in this case, it makes sense to exchange maybe from a single unit to 2 doors, or a single to a duplex, or a duplex to a quadplex, because what we're going to do is we're going to try to extend your door count. So even though in my last example we talked about owning 16 properties, really what I'm looking at is owning 16 doors. Okay, so instead of buying maybe 4 single family properties, maybe we just buy a quadplex, and there's some advantages to that we'll talk about. Okay, so functional obsolescence, you want to make sure that you're selling your older properties or your outdated properties while we're still in a strong seller's market. You're going to use a 1031 exchange to defer the taxes on the sale, and you're going to roll it into a new property. Okay, there's 2 things that's going to happen here. First of all, if we bought a property for $500,000 that's now worth $700,000, okay, we're still only depreciating a $500,000 property. So what happens is by going into a $700,000 property, we've now increased our cost basis, and now we have even more write-offs for a tax advantage when it comes to the money that we're making on our real estate. Okay, so second good part of an exchange is that we get to increase our cost basis or a depreciation basis. Okay, number 3, we can sell 1 door for 2. Okay, or we can sell 2 doors for 4. And then, like I said, we get to exit the property before we need to make significant repairs or renovation costs. Okay. So 1031 exchanges, okay, we talked about how that allows us to defer all or some of the taxes that are due on a property when we sell it. Okay, first of all, a couple rules, and I have a whole different set of education on 1031 exchanges, but a quick overview. When you're doing a 1031 exchange, you need to identify your replacement property within 45 days, and you need to close on that property within 180 days. Okay, you must always exchange up. You cannot you can exchange down, but you're going to have a partial tax burden. So, but you need to exchange up in order to defer or eliminate that tax burden. Okay. So the new property has to be of equal or greater value. Okay. And the amount of leverage must not be decreased either. So you can't go, I'm going to go from a $500,000 to a $700,000 loan, and I'm going to go, or property, and I'm going to go from a $300,000 property or a $300,000 loan to a $200,000 loan. You can't do that either, okay? You can exchange one property for multiple properties as long as you follow, there's a handful of rules, and I'm not gonna get into them because they're complicated, but there's some rules on how you can exchange one for multiple properties, okay? So if anybody's in that situation and we need to have a conversation about it, I'm happy to talk to you about your personal stuff on a different call as far as how to exchange one into multiple properties.
Hey,
right.
Nick.
Yes, Ahmad.
Okay. So on 1031s, is if I have a single family home, let's say for 4 years, and in year 2, I did a cost segregation study, and then in year 5, I want to do a 1031 to help scale. Is that possible, and what impact does that have on the cost segregation benefits that I received in year 2?
Yeah, so you're just going to have when you cost seg, you're just going to have, you've accelerated your depreciation. And so now all you're going to do is you're going to roll over your unrecaptured depreciation. You're going to roll it over into the new property.
Oh, so I can't do another one on the new property. It sounds.
No, you can.
Oh, you can. Okay.
When you sell using a 1031 exchange, you're deferring not only your capital gain, but you're also deferring your the amount of depreciation that you've taken, right? So like if you depreciate a property $100,000 and then you sell it, they're gonna recapture that depreciation of $100,000. But in a 1031 exchange, you push that $100,000 worth of depreciation onto the next deal, okay? And it's just from a tax standpoint. It's not saying, oh, now I've already used $100,000 worth of depreciation for this new property. No, it's just attaching that $100,000 worth of depreciation to the new property so that when you sell it, let's say you depreciate the new property $100,000 as well. Well, when you sell it, you're going to get hit with $200,000 worth of depreciation gains.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
And then can I do the opposite of what you just described? So can I take 2 properties and buy like 2 single family homes and buy like a 4-plex?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great.
As long as the total value
Right.
of the quadplex or whatever is bigger.
His value is higher. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Good questions. So here's some advantages to owning multi-unit. So if you go into a multi-unit, first of all, multi-unit properties tend to generate slightly better cash flow than single family properties. So a duplex is going to have a little better cash flow than 2 single family units. And it's not because people pay more to live in a duplex. In fact, they probably generally pay a little bit less to live in a duplex, but you're gonna have one tax bill and you're gonna have a single insurance policy. So instead of having two homes where you have 2 tax bills, 2 insurance policies, you're gonna have one, and it's gonna offset that difference in rent and probably give you a slightly better cash flow. Okay, multi-units can be easier to manage because they're all in one place if you're managing your own properties. Renovations and remodels are usually easier and cheaper because you can just order 2 of 4 of everything. And then multi-family properties, many times, especially as you get higher, if you get bigger than 4 units, but even with 4 units, they're evaluated by cap rate using net operating income. And so we can actually do what's called forced appreciation with those. So you don't have to wait for the market to do something in order to get money out of it. You can actually force the appreciation by increasing the net operating income, which is essentially increasing rents and decreasing expenses. So it's just at this point, it's like running a business. And so if you can buy a quadplex and go, ooh, I can decrease some of the expenses on this because they're paying for gas and electric, and I can actually bill that back to the tenant. Beautiful. Now we've increased our net operating income. Also, I can increase rents by $50 per month per unit, and I can increase my net operating income that way. Okay. So with the multi-units, there are some other values there. Okay. All right. Any questions on the exchange piece?
Yeah, just another question. So, as you started out and you were like, every 5 years, buy a house and da 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 da. And could you accelerate that by doing 1031s, starting year 2 in increasing the value of your portfolio instead of waiting every 5 years to buy a home?
Yeah, so in this case, the every 5 years comes from just trying to wait till there's enough appreciation in the property. But certainly you could always add cash. Like this method that I just showed you is literally you buying your first and maybe second property, and everything else is releveraged. But if you also wanted to save money and invest in the meantime, or we had enough appreciation to where we could 1031 and move up, absolutely. So we went through some years in Colorado where we had 12, 13% of appreciation in a single year. You could have done this method and bought property every year with that level of appreciation. So
Okay.
So absolutely, this is just a very linear, like, look, you could do every 5 years, and I'll tell you what happens is as you grow your portfolio every 5 years, it becomes like maybe your first property into your second property maybe takes 5 years, and then maybe your second into your third maybe takes 3 years. But by the time you have 4, 5, or 6 properties, I promise you, like it's pretty easy to do a property a year after that.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right. So
Yo.
let's talk about yeah, Zach.
One more question. I know you've been talking about like leveraging with refining. I mean, are you including in like HELOCs, and what's better at certain times to do HELOC versus refining your house? Just depends on
Yes.
obviously interest rate, right? So I'm just curious what, if you would prefer HELOC over depending on the situation.
Yep. So the only time I would recommend a HELOC is generally if you're doing the house hacking method, because getting a home equity line of credit on a rental property or a non-owner occupied property is fairly difficult, fairly expensive, and
I gotcha.
and they limit loan limits. So they most companies, like you can on your personal property, you can get a home equity line of credit up to $500,000 if you've got enough equity. A lot of banks either don't even offer it on investment properties, or they limit it to like 50K, or they limit it to like 60% loan to value. So you'd have to have a tremendous amount of equity in it in order to get anything out of a HELOC. The second piece to that is I would never recommend a HELOC to somebody that's not cash flow heavy, meaning that because the interest rate is higher and it's variable, we add a lot of risk by having a HELOC if you don't have the ability to pay it off quickly, or if your payment were to go up $300 a month, that you could take that hit. And so I really like HELOCs for people that are cash flow heavy. So if you've got a job, for example, where you're making, let's say you live on $6K a month, but you've got a job where you're making 20, 30K a month, I would tell you HELOC for sure. Like get a HELOC and then, pay it off 15, 20 grand at a time. Then you're in a much better position to do a home equity line of credit. So being cash flow heavy, I think, is important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're
Cool. All right, let's talk about some exit strategies, because this is where things get really powerful and where you can really understand. And we don't even I don't get in a whole lot to the tax advantages here, but when you really start to understand the tax advantages, which I talk about in my advanced class that I teach, you'll realize like how stupid the power of real estate really is. So first of all, there are tons of exit strategies in in real estate and in these methods that allow you to kind of move into life, move into kind of the end of your life, or just into retirement, whether that's early retirement or whatever it may be. But the reality is the tax advantages are massive, and so the exiting assets and creating legacy portfolios, they have serious tax advantages for you and your beneficiaries. So when you see people that are passing on generational wealth of hundreds of millions of dollars, they're not able to do that through normal taxation stuff, because anything over $11 million, the estate tax exemption, somebody passing on $100 million, $200 million worth of wealth, there's an extreme tax burden there. So I can guarantee you those people are not paying that massive estate tax bill, because they're creating very good exit strategies to these things to maintain their wealth, right? So the idea here is you're 50, 60, 70 years old and you've built a net worth that you can't spend. Like if you're worth 10, 20 million bucks, like just the interest alone on that, you're going to live a great lifestyle. If you had imagine what it would be like right now to have $500,000 of tax-free income coming in every single year. You'd live an incredible life. Okay, so let's look at a couple of exit strategies. So some people like to just get rid of their debt. They want to get rid of their stress later in life, so they get rid of their debt. So you sell off a couple of properties, you pay off the debt, and you live on the cash flow of the others. So now you've got no debt on the properties, and you've got this, maybe $20,000 a month coming in, $30,000 a month coming in on your properties, and you just live on your cash flow. The second way is you can exchange a few of the properties. This is a really cool method, by the way. This is a way to turn your tax deferment into tax exemption. You can exchange a couple of your properties, kind of like Hamad was saying, maybe sell 2 or 3 of your properties and buy one really nice property. So you can go down and buy a multi-million-dollar property in Naples, okay? Rent it for a year, because you cannot exchange into a personal property. So you exchange it into another investment property, rent it for a year, okay? So like for like, investment property, renters get out after a year, you move in, you now have moved into that property, live in it for 2 of the prior 5 years, it now becomes a personal property. Now you can sell it and take a $500,000 capital gains exemption. Pretty cool stuff, okay? So option number 3, you could lose the stress of being a property owner. Sell everything you have, put $10 million into your bonds and treasuries, make a 5% return on it, live on $500,000 a year. Pretty easy. Okay, find a company to do an umbrella loan, okay, over all your properties. So again, you got $10 million in property, refinance those properties, okay, every year. Okay, your $10 million worth of real estate is going to become worth $10,500,000. Refinance 60% of that appreciation. So it appreciates 500,000, refinance 300K of it. Okay. You're going to do that every single year, pull 300K out. Refinancing is a tax exempt cash. What's the thing I'm trying to say? Refinancing is a tax-free, God, I've lost my words. I'm sorry. You don't get taxed on a cash out refinance. Okay, so you're pulling $300,000 out with no tax. Okay.
Hey, Nick, I had a quick question on the cash out refinance. Does that have any change on like your mortgage rate when you do that?
Yeah, no different than what it was before. So if I've got a 5% interest rate on all my properties and it's now a 6% interest rate, then maybe I don't want to do that. Okay, but maybe it doesn't affect me enough that I care. Because remember, if I get $10 million worth of real estate, I'm probably renting that $10 million worth of real estate for around $50,000 a month. Okay, so that $50,000 a month, if I just do a 3% increase, okay, in rent rates, I'm going to increase by $1,500 per month, okay, every single year, which will offset the $300,000 that I pull out and potentially offset any increase in interest rate too. So it just depends. So again, that's why we have multiple strategies here, because some years it will not make sense to refinance your portfolio. Okay, if you refinanced your whole portfolio 4 years ago and have a 3% interest rate on all of it, refinancing your entire $10 million portfolio into into a 7% interest rate right now, that would not make much sense. So that's why we have multiple strategies. Okay. The other thing, just don't change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Grow the portfolio even bigger if you want. Focus on cash flow. Focus on ease of management. There's all kinds of things that you can do here. Okay. So you can grow bigger. The other thing you could do is just don't do anything at all. Just stop investing and just allow those principal payments to slowly chop away at the mortgages that you have, and just enjoy the cash flow that's coming in, and just hang out. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about two tax strategies real quick. Again, I'm not going to get into them because they go down a massive rabbit hole. But one of the cool things is that if you hold real estate until you die, okay, when you build a legacy portfolio, you get what's called step-up basis. So let's say you bought $10 million worth of real estate over your lifetime, and it's now worth 25 million. Okay. If you sold all that property right now, you would have a $15 million capital gain, and you'd be on the hook for that. Okay. Plus, you'd be on the hook for all of the depreciation that you took off over all those years. Your tax bill would be tremendous. You're talking $6, $7, $8 million in a tax bill. Okay. But if you die with it and you leave it to your heirs or you leave it to your beneficiaries, they're going to get what's called step-up basis, and the values go to today's values. So now all the property that they acquired $25 million worth of property. So if they sell it right away, they're going to sell it for 25 million because that's what it's worth, which means they have a zero capital gain. If you have a zero capital gain, you have no tax to pay. Okay. So if you hold the real estate until you die, you can leave a really nice portfolio to your kids or to your heirs, and give them step-up basis. Okay. The other thing that can be done is you can use trusts, and trusts have benefits. I'm not going to get into trusts. I think you should talk to an attorney about putting it into trusts. But trusts help you avoid things like probate, and help you pass property as well. All right. So once you do this, once you build this portfolio out, what do you do now? And the cool thing is kind of whatever you want. So there takes a certain amount of financial discipline to build this portfolio that we're talking about. But later in life, you won't have to make financial decisions based on, do I have enough money? Because it won't even be a thing, right? And so you can just say yes to whatever you want. You can go on vacation, you can get a new car, you can go to the Super Bowl if you want. Like you literally do whatever you want, okay? Because you won't be pinned down by your 9-to-5 job paying you $6,000, $8,000 a month. Okay. All right. That is it. I did pretty good. We did it right about an hour. So this is me and my team, and this is the stuff that we specialize in. So again, we'll work with you to help you build the financial kind of portfolio, and figure out what your end goal is. And so what we do is we'll sit down with you, figure out what you're trying to accomplish, what your end goal is. Maybe it's, I want to retire at 55 years old. I want to retire at 60 years old. Okay, what amount of money is it going to take to do that? And then we work backwards to figure out how much real estate you need to acquire to do that. Okay, and how much money it's going to take to acquire that amount of real estate. And so we can literally build out a formula to achieve anything that you want to achieve. It just depends. If you say, hey, Nick, I want to get $100 or $100 million portfolio, you probably need a level of income to do that. But I will tell you that any level of income can get you to $1 million of net worth, can get you to a couple $1 million of net worth by the time you're of retirement age. And that's if you, again, buy a couple of properties and just sit on them. And that doesn't include maybe a 401k or an IRA or something else that you have funded. So we can do it in real estate alone. Okay. So my legal disclaimer there at the bottom. Okay. Just know that it does not constitute legal or financial advice. You should contact your CPA, an attorney, whatever else. We have those resources if you'd like. This is just my knowledge of many years of working in the investment realm. So a couple other things. I thought we had some other stuff. Yes, This is, if you would do me a favor, I would love to get your feedback on this. If you just shoot that QR code, I think there's like a 5-question thing there that just tells me, you know, what you liked about the webinar, what you didn't like, what you'd like some more explanation on. And honestly, if you'd like me to reach out and help you out with your personal stuff, I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to bug you otherwise. I'll let you know when our next webinars are, that type of stuff, but happy to help where I can. Last piece is, again, surveys up here in the top left-hand corner. If you want to check out any of our other things, you can catch us on some of these socials. Meetup is where we put all of these webinars and seminars. Some of these seminars we do in person as well. We'll do them at like a local brewery. And then also I have 37 episodes of podcasts down there in the bottom left-hand corner that you can take a look at. And we go over pretty much everything investing. We have episodes on 1031 exchanges, on cost segregation, on multifamily properties, single family properties, acquiring your first property, how to manage your properties, the pitfalls of being a landlord. There's all kinds of stuff there. So if you get an opportunity and want to learn a little bit more and like hearing me talk, I guess, that's a good place to do it. So I don't think there's anything else. No, that's it. So I'll leave those up there for you guys to snap. Any last questions as we finish up for today?
No, I just appreciate your time.
You bet, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, man.
Hey Nick, a question on deductions. I don't know if that's okay, and I get it if you know you like I'm not a tax guy. I totally get that.
I'll tell you if I don't know it.
Okay. Is it okay to assume that, you know, obviously loan interest and depreciation and property tax are deductions that you can take? But what about the cost of loans? And if I'm doing a short-term rental, the cost of furnishing the place, the rehab, if I'm doing like a fix, are those also deductions that I can consider?
Yes, so you have to figure out which ones are depreciations and which ones are deductions. That will go through your CPA.
Okay.
We also have opportunity for, especially with renovations, if you take a property and you renovate it and turn it into a rental property, there are opportunities for bonus depreciation. And so some of the things that you can do right now is you can actually rehab a property, and instead of normally, like if you were to go in and let's say put new windows in a property, that would be a depreciable expense and something that would need to be straight line depreciated or cost segged if you wanted to. But bonus depreciation allows you to, when you first buy a property and you put a bunch of money in it to rehab it, that bonus depreciation lets you take the entire cost of those renovations and drop it into that bonus depreciation bucket and take it in year one.
Perfect. Okay.
So the answer in short is yes, there are opportunities to take the entirety of the cost of the renovations that you do. Definitely talk to your CPA about that, so there's a phase out right now in both. Well, there's a phase out of bonus depreciation right now. So bonus depreciation sunsets in, let's see, 2004, 2025, 26. I think 26 is the last year. So right now, bonus depreciation, you can get 60% of your bonus depreciation you can take in year one. Next year it'll be 40%. The year after that it'll be 20%, and after that it'll be 0. There is a chance, and it probably depends heavily upon who is elected president this upcoming year, but there is a chance that tax bill gets revisited and things like bonus depreciation get added back in. But you probably benefited, if you just did a cost seg analysis in the last couple of years, you probably benefited greatly from bonus depreciation and moving your 5-year bucket into one year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
I'm good, sir.
All right. Well, thank you all for popping in. Hopefully you guys learned something. Again, if you wouldn't mind just shooting me some quick feedback, I'd appreciate it. And hopefully we can catch you on the next one. I can't remember what's next month, but if you check out our meetup page, you can see when our next high level one is. And then if you want to catch the intro, again, I cycle these every 3 months. So thank you everybody for joining me. Appreciate it on a Wednesday night. And let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks,
Yep.
Nick.
Thanks everybody.
Yep. Bye.
All right.
Thank you, bye.